Locker down that end of the room.
Really?
Evening, members. I'll start this meeting at 7 o'clock, but first, if you'd like to stand for a minute's silence for Her late Majesty the Queen. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, go to the first item on the agenda, which is public question time. I have no members of the public. Item 2, apologies for absence. Councillor Frank Osborne has a personal commitment. Councillor Dooley is standing in for Councillor Helen Farron. Councillor Mrs. Belsey is away, and the town mayor and deputy mayor have other commitments. Is that noted?
Noted.
Thank you. Agenda item 3 is the minutes. I'd like to propose the minutes. May I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Is there any questions on the minutes? No, then can we all show hands in favour? That's agreed. Thank you very much. No, excuse me while I sign the book. Oh, excuse me. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Do I have any? I have none. Agenda item 5, chairman's announcements. And what I would like to say is that the Operation London Bridge procedures were rolled out well. The town was able to ensure that everything was in place quickly. And I'd just like to say this opportunity, thanking the town clerk for doing, and the staff doing a lot of the organising for that. The regional,
Thank you.
okay, you're welcome. Regional responses were a little slower, but on the whole, it worked out well. And in accordance with the advised timetables, I'd like to thank all those members that supported in the mayor by coming out and attending the events. The proclamation out here at East Court on the terrace was very well supported, and perhaps it was probably one of the best in mid-Sussex, and about over 200 people attended, and it was a lovely sunny day, so it was very moving actually. We were informed last week by the National Cyber Security Centre of a claimed hack of data. However, the police investigation has determined that the so-called breach is actually information which is already in the public domain, and therefore no breach has occurred. Our IT support has confirmed the council's IT system is secure with no detection of any breaches. Thank you. Agenda item 6. Pardon? Oh, beg your pardon. Just one more item, which was in addition. I'd just like to advise as a follow-up from the last meeting, that despite a conditional offer of £900,000 being made for the old police station, this was rejected by the Police and Crime Commissioner, who intend to take the sale of the building to the commercial market for development. Had it been in the interest to the P&CC, a public consultation and an application for Public Works Loan Board would have been required before this could happen. Okay, that's the end of my announcements. Item 6. Item 6 is receive the approved payments for June, July and August. The committee are asked to note this. Does any members have any questions on item 6 on the agenda? I see none, so that is noted.
Noted.
Item 7 on the agenda is Town Council Finances Position Statement. Again, this for noting, but if members have any questions, or would Mr. Chambers like to just say a few words on that?
Nothing in particular to add that's not in the report. The only thing I just wanted to, an additional thing I want to just raise so members are aware now, is on Thursday last week, we had the results of, the council had their results of the external audit back for the last financial year, and pleased to say that we got an unqualified opinion on our accounts for last year. With, yeah, so it all was fine with that.
Thanks very much. Well, if members got any questions to Mr. Chambers? I'll see that. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Chambers and his admin team for a wonderful job. I don't think there's a time when we haven't had an unqualified audit since he's been here. Thank you. I think that's quite right. So all credit, and very many thanks for you for what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that is noted, yeah. Item 8 on the agenda is performance indicators. This is for noting. Do I have any questions for members on that? I'll take that as noted.
Noted.
Thank you. Agenda item 9, recommendations from committee. There are none, and nothing on the AMT agenda which should bring any. So is that noted?
Noted.
Agenda item 10, delegated decisions. Well, that is coming up later in the report, so I'll come to that later. Agenda item 11, electric charging points. You can see the report in front of you. The committee are asked to approve the work plan and to amend it, suggesting new projects which could be positive.
So you've jumped a bit, Chairman. You're on the electric charging points. So.
Oh, sorry. Right, gone on to environmental report a bit too soon.
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet.
You've got a decision to make for you.
Yeah, the report seeks to proceed with the tender process for the installation of electric charging points at East Court. I would like to propose this. Do I have a seconder?
I'd like to second that.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader. Do we have any questions on electric charging points? I'm quite happy what's in the report. Good news.
Chairman Harry is with us. If he's got something he'd like to add.
Yeah.
Yes, if you'd like to carry on, Harry.
Yeah, more than happy just to explain this one a little bit more. So something that caused a little bit confusion with myself, I must admit, and something that I've now clarified, was that I put in the report the cost per unit is around £1,500. The cost per unit is for 2, so it is for 2 sockets. That's how it was quoted to me, and that's why it caused me some confusion. That means that the rough amount of money that we would be able to claim back would be £700. So 2 sockets, maximum of 350. That's £700. With the rough cost of the whole installation being 1,500. If we then take away the £700, it would be the remainder that's left that we would be asking the council to spend on. Roughly, from what I've worked out, we would be able to get that back in around a year with the current electric market and where it's going, and how much that would be able to charge back to the public for public use. Just one thing to note, so this is for one charging unit at East Grinstead Town, the council, the car park, and one for our own use. For the future, we hope to have an electric tipper vehicle, although that will be a very separate agenda point.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any questions for Harry on that? So can we all agree with a show of hands? Thank you very much. I'd just like to say on that this council is moving fairly swiftly with going green. We already have electric strimmers and some electric hand tools, and obviously we're budgeting for changing of our vehicles to electric or hybrid. So we are actually going down that road of going green and trying to protect the environment. So I think this town council is doing its bit. Thank you. And then we come on to the environmental report, agenda item 12. Again, Mr. Pennell has taken over this work. We have a revised plan of work done and projects to be considered, and Appendix D refers to that. And the committee are asked to approve the work plan and to amend it by suggesting new projects which could be costed and reviewed. Obviously, the reports in the agenda there. I would like to propose this, May I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thanks very much, Deputy Leader. Any questions? No, I'll see none. So can I have a show of hands in agreement? That's agreed. Then we come to agenda item 13. This is a motion from Councillor Amos, and I will pass this over to Councillor Amos to introduce his motion.
Thank you, Leader. There are 3 motions here, so I'll take them one by one if you don't mind. The first motion concerns the top 3 clauses, and I'll discuss the other 2 in a moment. But let me just talk about the first motion first. What I am proposing to do is take my allowance that I did not claim last year and shift that money via a special reserve into the youth sports grant and reduce next year the budget for the youth sports grant. But in reality, it will be the same. It will just be made up by my allowance. So no budget is being touched. All that is happening next year, if you vote for this, if you vote for the youth sports grant, is my allowance will be paying for it. And that means that there'll be a 1p tax cut per person relative to the counterfactual for each taxpayer. So given it's not going to cost you anything, it's not going to result in any cuts to services, all it's going to be is my allowance going to fund the youth sports grants. I would commend this motion to the councillors, and I propose that motion to this council.
Do you have a seconder?
I would hope I'd have a seconder. Wait. Can I just repeat?
Councillor Amos, do you have a seconder?
Could one of you second it, please? It's not going to cost anything to the council tax. It's not going to cost the council anything. All it's going to do is shift.
Sorry.
Well, I cannot believe that despite the fact this is not going to cost anybody anything, not one of you, could you please second it, please? It's not going to cost you anything. It's moving my allowance, which I'm entitled to, according to your reasoning, to the East Grinstead Sports Grant.
There are reasons for that, Councillor Amos, but I must ask, do you have a seconder?
No, I do not have a seconder.
Then I'm afraid that motion is withdrawn
Right,
It fails.
or failed.
thank you.
It's withdrawn. So you have a.
Yeah, I have
You have
two
a
further
second
motions.
motion.
Yeah, I do have a second motion. The second motion proposes the abolition of town councillor allowances. And I'd like to put forward the 3 reasons as to why you should support that. First, allowances are unnecessary to attract enough candidates. If you look at Felbridge, Ardingly, Cookfield and Twynham parish councils, they do not pay their councillors any allowances whatsoever, and yet they all manage to fill their seats. And I would like to note what some councillors said last year, according to the minutes. Most councillors, and I quote, do not know there is any allowance at the point of standing for election. It is therefore not an incentive. I believe this was said by Councillor Woodgate and Councillor Farron last year. So according to their reasoning, it is not necessary to have these allowances given they didn't know. The second reason as to why these allowances should be abolished and replaced with a £200 capped expense, which would include, or rather cover, printing, paper and ink, is they are counterproductive. And this is because instead of voting for what's right, councillors will vote for what's popular, given us a £4,000 incentive to get re-elected. It's basic public choice theory, which should be clear to all people interested in politics. And then the third reason to support the abolition of the town council's allowances is it will result in about a £1.70 tax reduction for each taxpayer, which is vitally needed at this time with inflation at about 9 or 10%. Now, just before I finish, I want to address some of the rebuttals that councillors will no doubt make. And that is, well, we deserve this money because we work for it. I'd like to hear the reason as to why charity shop workers, those who work for the Bluebell Railway, volunteers, given they work for that, work for their organisations, why it is the case that councillors should be paid, but they should not be paid. I personally think this should be done out of community spirit. And I would like to note that 506 members of the public, according to this petition, agree. So given this council does like saying we should do something because the community wants it, this is very good proof, this petition, 506 people, that the people do not want allowances. So by your own reasoning, you should vote for this motion. Yeah, that's the end of that.
That's it. Thank you, Councillor Amos. Do I have a seconder for your motion?
Well, since Frank's not here, no. So I move on to the
Sorry, Councillor,
Then-
can you just
sorry.
say the number again that was on your petition?
506 people.
That motion has failed.
Um,
Councillor Amos, you want to introduce your
Last motion.
third motion.
Well, I'm always told we should compromise, that we should compromise in a democracy. So I'm not going to propose the abolition in this motion. I'm going to propose 10% reduction. And I would like to give the following reason, which is, of course, in addition to the reasoning I've just put forward. So last year, or rather 2 years ago, in 2020, councillors were paid about £25 per meeting. No, £45. Yeah, the pay per meeting was about £45. In 2022, it's gone up to £55 because the number of meetings has been reduced by 16%, because you reduce the number of councillors on each committee. So the number of attendances that are required has gone down by 16%. So the effective rate of pay per meeting has gone up by 21%. As councillors, we're not being 21% more productive. But I would take into account inflation. So if you take into account inflation and you adjust the current allowances to the level that they were previously in real terms in 2020, the allowance per meeting that is, the figure comes to £1,056.57. I'm proposing cutting allowances down to £1,057.50. So that is simply ensuring the allowance in 2020 and 2023 is what it was in 2020 in real terms. So given we all voted for, or rather all you did, vote for the allowance in 2020, and there hasn't been a significant increase in council activity since then, it stands to reason this council should also vote for the 10% cut that I'm proposing. So I would commend this motion to the council and seek a seconder.
Do you have a seconder, Councillor Amos?
Would anybody like to second my motion?
I see no hands up, Councillor Amos. That motion has failed. I'd just like to thank you for your hard work, what you've done. I understand where you're coming from. I wish I could stand here all night and say exactly what councillors do for the community.
Well, we've got
Look, I'm
an hour and 40 minutes, so we
wrapping
could.
up. So yeah, we've got the rest of the agenda to do. It's not just sitting on committee meetings, it's actually getting out there and doing things that we do on behalf of the community. Anyway, I'd like once again to thank you for that. And I'm going to move on to agenda item 4, which is 14, beg your pardon, which is the community revenue grants. And you can see from the report there, you can see there was a demand for £5,015. We had to look at that because the fund is actually £3,000 for that. So it's the grants that I looked at with the town clerk on in front of you. You'll notice that the awards there, the total award is 2,500, because it'll come to later on in the report about the a grant to go into the community to help to certain organisations to help the vulnerable out in this cost of living crisis in the winter, and I'll come to that report. So I've taken the £500 off that to go towards that fund, and we are looking to look at things later on when we come to do the earmark grants as well. We're trying to find money to go towards that £5,000 without going into reserves if we can help it. But that, I will come to that later on in the report.
So your suggestions are tabled,
Yeah.
Chairman, which were on everybody's seat for them to see the recommendations for the distribution of the community grants under this item. So I don't know if you wish to propose that, Chairman, and then discuss any items on that.
Yes, thank
One
you,
seconded.
Town Clerk. I'll read out recommendations first, yeah.
Well, you need to go through your community revenues grant.
Okay.
The
Right,
table,
yes,
the
yes.
table
So,
that you've got, Chair.
beg your pardon. I'd like to propose that. Do I have a seconder? Thank you very much, Deputy Lee. Is there any questions on that at all? Councillor Amos.
Well, I'd like to oppose every single last one of these grants. It is not the responsibility of government, or indeed this council, to forcefully take people's property to give it to a camera club or the Evergreens Pensioners Club or the East Grinstead Bonfire Society. If these individuals want this money, they should go out into the town and ask for people's money. They should not be using the coercive power of this council, or rather the district council, as you insist upon saying, to extract funds from the population. And I will say it again, you must understand what you are ultimately doing at this council. You are saying to people, we will put you in jail if you do not pay your council tax bill to pay for these community revenue grants. That is unacceptable. People have a right to their property. The taxation you are proposing is theft. None of you addressed it at the last meeting. If you take somebody's property without their consent, it is theft. And this is what these grants have to rely on. That is taxation, i.e. theft. So I will be opposed to this wretched list totally. And I want to say to the public at home, I can't stand your political views. There is no respect for people's property rights here, none whatsoever. You're quite happy to see the police threaten people implicitly and sometimes explicitly with jail, so you can have these ridiculous things funded. Well, that's not fair. They're not ridiculous, but they should be funded on a voluntary basis. Do understand what you're doing. You are threatening people with jail if they fail to pay their tax bill to finance these things. That is not respecting individuals. That is the behaviour of gangsters, robber barons and villains. It's ridiculous. So I will oppose this totally, and I hope the public know it.
Well, thanks very much for that, Councillor Amos. Just look through that, some of those grants that we offer. We put a budget of £3,000 in there. Now, you look at this, family support work, £500. I won't even go there. What does that support? Support families, that sort of thing, and there's work to supporting the families. You've got the Grinstead Talking News for the blind. Now, these people do a wonderful job enabling those people to be able to communicate or to read through their tapes, that sort of thing. So it helps them out. It stops them being isolated. And there's other groups in the past that have come through that actually help people in the community. It gives them something to belong to, somewhere to go out and socialise, which is so important for your mental well-being. This is what this Conservative Town Council does. We try and help our community as much as we can afford to. And that is so important. That's what makes Eastminster a great place. You look at the amount. When I was married in 2015-16, I've lived here most of my life. I did not realise how many voluntary groups are out there in the community, getting kids off the street, giving them something to do, something they can actually get involved in. That is gold dust. That is helping the people in this community, and this town council will do everything we can within reason to support those groups. Councillor Dooley.
I completely agree with what you're saying, Town Leader, and I think that you picked two, but I think you could probably take every single one of these areas that in some sort of way support people within their mental health. I also think that if you take these groups, probably the percentage of people that have an interest is far higher than the 506 people that Councillor Amos got voted to abolish our allowances. I'm sure there's thousands of people that are associated or linked to people who are associated with these particular organisations. So I think that I understand the comments. I do understand them. I don't agree with them, but I understand the comments that Councillor Amos is saying. But I think on the whole, I think these are not just decisions we're taking lightly. They are actually decisions on people's lives, really, in some respect.
Thank you, Councillor
Could I
Dooley.
reply?
Councillor Amos, going to come back.
I don't deny what you said at all. I think you could argue that this is for the greater good of the town. You know, it benefits people, it outweighs the costs perhaps of the taxation, but that doesn't detract from what I've said, which is you are taking money from people without their consent. And we tend to call that theft. And the fact that it may help people is irrelevant. You're still unconsensually taking people's property, and that is theft. And you have not addressed that point. I don't deny that this may be for the greater good. I think that's questionable, but I don't deny it may be for the greater good. But I don't think it's legitimate to take people's property for the greater good. I mean, if Oxfam went and mugged somebody, let's say they took £100 out of their wallet, and then they went and gave it to people who were going blind in Africa, we'd go, well, that's totally unacceptable, but that would save a child's eyesight or many children's eyesight. But we still say it's unacceptable. And by the same reasoning, it's unacceptable to take people's property so somebody can go to a camera club. It is unacceptable, and you have failed to address that. I don't deny what the leader is saying outright, that this may be for the greater good, but you have not addressed, and I'd like you to address how this is not theft. This has to be financed by taxation, and that is taking people's property without their consent. And what is theft? It's taking people's property without their consent. None of you have addressed this. The best that we came to was Adam Peacock saying this is an act of parliament that alters the council tax. It's like, yeah, but acts of parliament have authorised slavery. They have authorised, locking up homosexuals. They have authorised all sorts of atrocities. An act of parliament doesn't suddenly make something legitimate, and it certainly doesn't make stealing from people legitimate. So I really would ask, how is this not theft? I'm genuinely interested as to what your answer is. I don't deny it may be for the greater good, but how is it not theft? I mean, perhaps you want to defend theft for the greater good.
Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, I think that's an absolute load of tosh.
Why?
Because the public elect us to make these decisions for them. Simple as that.
Okay, well, can I reply to that?
No, let Councillor Matthews finish.
Yeah,
please. Without
there's
interruption,
not
please.
there's not much more to say, except that I was elected to make these sort of decisions for them. And if at the next election people think that I've exceeded my powers, they kick me out. Simple as that. And I really think we ought to move to the proposal.
Yes, thank you. I think we can't go any further on this, Councillor Amos.
Why not?
Because we're just going around in circles. We've
Chairman,
got
if I can just remind you all the standing orders, when you are under debate, you are all entitled to speak once on a motion or a
Yes.
matter. You have a motion in front of you, which is the proposal of these. 3 councillors have spoken, and the standing orders do not allow 4 councillors to come back on that.
So exactly. So I've allowed you to come back twice, Councillor Amos. As you know, I try to be very fair with people to try and let them have their say. But now I'm going to ask the committee to note the revenue grants. Is that agreed?
You're not voting, you're voting for, so you've proposed, you've had a second, could you please have a show of hands?
Right, it's just said noting there. Okay, that's agreed. So go to the cost of living. As you can see, that's in the report. I'll just say a few words about that. It seems only right to leave any surplus in this cost centre, not to go to general reserves, but instead help out with the cost of living challenges. There are parts of the cost centre which may be underspent, and I'm seeking approval to set up a fund that we can help the businesses who have their own increased costs, but where they are opening the doors to those who are in need. The proposals are in the paper, and I suggest that an allowance of up to £5,000 be prepared. And if the budget surplus cannot accommodate this, that the council meet the costs from reserves. I'd like to propose that. Another seconder.
Second, actually.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Are there any questions on that?
What will it do?
Basically, it came about one public house establishment was opening up its doors to the local community, elderly, vulnerable people in this cost of living crisis and the heating costs, etc., for them to go into their establishment for a period of several hours maybe, and they can sit there and perhaps have the food at slightly reduced cost. And also there's a facility for mums and kids to go there as well. this just stops people sitting at home when it's cold, having all the heating on, when obviously we haven't seen the start of it there with gas and electricity prices going through the roof, starting about now. So this fund goes to help those sort of establishments, you know, to help those people in the community that are finding it difficult to afford these high prices. So the town clerk and myself went to this particular establishment, and we thought, what a good idea, very community minded, and this could be opened up to maybe other establishments with probably say £1,000 going to each establishment, and that would go to help with their costs, but also the cost of accommodating the vulnerable. So I'll go to the recommendations if no one else has got any questions. And that is to 1, to approve this extraordinary expenditure allocation to be distributed by the clerk and reported to public services. And 2, to recommend to council that any shortfall in the budget be met by general reserves. I'd like to propose that. I've done that already, haven't I? So can we have a show of hands, please, in agreement? That's carried. We'll go to item 15. This is the insurance contract. This, I hope you've read this, is quite a comprehensive report from Mr. Chambers. It is quite eye-watering, really. Just goes to show how the costs are spiraling virtually out of control. So this is to advise committee of the delegated decision taken and the reasons behind the decision. It is a bit of a shock to the increase, and this is the best deal that we can get. The deal is locked in for 1 year, but it's a 3-year contract if we wish to stay. So I'm not going to read all that out, but is there any questions on that, this insurance contract? So is that
I don't know if Mr. Chambers wants to add anything about where we are.
did you
on,
want to say anything? I didn't think you did, but if you do, you're most welcome.
Didn't have anything that too late now.
Just to reassure committee that obviously we are very aware of the hike in the cost, and we will be constantly talking to our broker with regards to when we were going out to seek new costs. But we do have the option, as you just said, Chair, to leave after a year. But I suspect, conversations Chambers and I had earlier today, is that we could find that costs are even higher next year. So we're probably sensible to stay where we are. But if the world changes and it looks like it is a better position next year, well, we may well go out next year again and see if we can get a better price. But I would be surprised if we're looking to leave the contract next year. But I just wanted to give the committee the assurance that we're not just going to sit back for 3 years on what's now a very high cost, although we accept and understand the reasons behind it.
Is that,
Yeah, so
is that price set for 3 years unless we bail out next year?
So it's not, the current price isn't set for the next 3 years. There is a 3-year agreement to the price where, so next year, the price will go up by a maximum of 5% plus inflation, whatever inflation is at that time.
But we have the option of leaving.
Absolutely, we're not signed up to a 3-year deal yet. So after the 1 year is up, we could walk away and say, no, we don't want this anymore. We're going to look elsewhere.
But it could be the right deal.
And that's the same for the 3rd year as well. You're not tied. So after you go to back to the 2nd year, it's kind of it's just a rolling 3-year contract.
That's right. Yeah.
trouble is there's very limited insurance companies that want to insure.
There are the insurance
so-
companies, and the research that we've done in the discussions, the insurance companies as a whole, broadly speaking, are very wary is probably the best word, of even touching the whole public sector, you know, local authority sector at all. They deem it as too high risk, essentially. Yeah, hence I say I've put it in the report, but yeah, approached another major insurance broker, BHIB, and they almost weren't even willing to enter into discussions. They saw what we were paying, they knew what the quote was, albeit it's gone up a huge amount. But BHIB basically spoke to some of their insurers, and they just weren't even willing to enter into discussions, because they said even given what you're now going to be paying, none of their insurers that they deal with could even say no, we couldn't even get close to that. It is, unfortunately, it is a classic case at the moment in the insurance market of it is what it is.
Yeah, it's.
I think, sorry, just to add one more point from that, it is, again, as it's in the report, it is worth noting, I think, that the council have been, we've had the benefit of actually really low rates on insurance for a number of years. So yes, it is a dramatic spike from what we have been paying, but if you sort of put it in context to actually say, well, okay, what we're paying now is up there, but what we were paying was down there, that was too low, it should have been there, then it doesn't actually make that spike in reality seem quite as high, which is the point I tried to, in the report, refer to by saying the price I think that we were paying in, I can't remember off the top of my head, about 6-7 years ago.
2009, 13.
Was it 13?
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, so yeah, 9 years ago, if you literally just applied a modest sort of 5% increase year on year to that price that we were paying in 2013, the price that we'd now be paying is more than what we are going to be paying.
So 29,000.
Yeah.
Let's just hope the world helps us out.
Okay, so have any more questions? Okay, this is report is for noting and second noted.
Noted.
And I'd just like to once again thank Mr. Chambers, because you just haven't suddenly worked on this, he's been working on this, investigating it since early part of the year.
Initial sort of investigations to it in early part of the year, but then it ramped up in July when we started getting into discussions with our broker. And unfortunately, predominantly the reason for the hold up that the process was quite a protracted, drawn out process. The hold up wasn't with ourselves, it wasn't with the broker, it was ultimately with the insurance company, just
not willing to.
Not really willing to talk for some time. Yeah.
So well, thanks very much for being on the ball. I'm very forward thinking on, looking at things in advance on that. So go to agenda item 16.
Mr. Chambers going to leave us at this point.
I am.
Chairman.
Yes, so if we bow out,
I've got to sing you out, I'm afraid.
bid you all farewell
Enjoy your dinner.
and wish you good night.
Good night. Well done.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 16, I'll take it members have read the report. It's basically to consider some staff hours and salary proposals for operational and retention of key staff purposes. The report is quite straightforward. While this has budgetary implication, expected that these changes will have very little effect. National pay increase is not yet settled, which will have an effect as set out. I'm happy to propose these. May I have a seconder?
I'm happy
Thank
to
you, second leader. Are there any questions from the members? Councillor Reynolds.
In addition to all the points that I've made throughout this evening, I'm opposed to this motion. But I would say just generally, this will make most people poorer. I think we just got to acknowledge that this will make most people poorer. It will make the people who are going to get the pay increase slightly better off. In some cases 10% better off for the lower paid staff. But it will make most people in the town poorer, because it will mean a higher council tax bill for them. And I think it's important to acknowledge that if you're voting for this, you are making most people in the town poorer. In fact, I would ask councillors, if I may, leader, just to acknowledge that this will make most people in the town poorer.
Thank you, Councillor Amos. Well, you say that, but it's negligible, really. I mean, our preset last year was 4.8%, and that's equivalent to an 8p a week increase in preset. So, but what we do have here, we're
Chairman, may I just make one brief response to Councillor Amos, something I'd like you to think about with regards to that comment that you just made. The increased hours for the various staff which are in here are all in areas of work where their area of work does produce an income. And the increased work potentially will result in a higher yield of income. The finance officers, of course, work in an area where we're currently expecting to see increase in our interest rates. And of course, that gives us greater yield on our investments. So we may well find that actually the increase in the hours that's being requested has very little, if any, effect on the preset. I can't say definitely yet, because obviously we haven't done the budgeting. The big effect will be the national pay increase, and that is not something that's before this council or committee today. And that is where the largest effect is, which obviously will affect preset. I can't see how it won't. But at this point in time, I think it's only fair to comment back that the small increases in hours that we're talking about, I don't know that I would necessarily agree with your submission.
That's a good reply.
Cassidy.
Also, to sort of comment that the member of staff that we've got on board currently have been here a little while now. The current industry-wide increases that are going on to replace some of these members of staff, you would find that you would be paying considerably higher to get people of an equal skill set, and that's from professional experience at the moment of what's going on in industry-wide for those kind of skills. So I think it's kind of it's a long-term win for us to retain these kind of staff on these fairly negligible. They're big in some respects, but they're fairly negligible when you look at how the industry is growing on its pay increases. When you're looking at things like LinkedIn and the job markets at the moment, so I think we need to be mindful that we need to try and retain some of these staff. And the quality of the staff, like Mr. Chambers, the work that he puts in is phenomenal, really, for what when you look at the pay grades actually in comparison to industry, but if we go out to in private. So it needs to be a real consideration as well.
Deputy Lee.
It's just to add on to Councillor Dooley's thing, that doesn't also include any new training that we'd have to do for new members of staff. And also the fact that we should be looking after the staff that we have. We want to give them career prospects and chances to live and not have to move outside of the area or outside of this business. So I think I understand where Councillor Amos is coming from, but I think in the grander scheme of things, we need to look after what we've got.
Well, yeah, I mean, thank you for that. As you can see, we've got some staff wanting extra hours. That is in the report. That is to obviously help with our income. Get quite busy with burials and taking on some Barnabas as well. So it's extra work. And then there's the two key managers that have been at the top end of their pay scales for quite a while now, and it's only right they move into the next pay scale band. And you're quite right, Councillor Dooley. We've got two excellent members of staff there, managers that are doing an excellent job for this town. They know how it works, and to get someone else in, well, as you've already mentioned, so it's only sensible that we go down that route.
I reply, Mr. Chair. Very good.
I'm able to come back once more, Councillor Amos.
I think that's a pretty good refutation of what I said. I would concede, though it's not conclusive, that it won't necessarily make people worse. I think you made a good case there.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I think it's important to admit when you're wrong. Dale Carnegie says, like, if you're wrong, you're potentially wrong, admit it and admit it quickly.
It's not wrong, it's a good generation of debate.
So,
Well done, Councillor Amos.
did I propose those and second it?
Yeah,
I did. Thank you very much. So the recommendations, the committee are asked to approve 1, the increased hours as set out in the report for the cemetery and compliance officer, community services assistant and the finance assistant. 2, the regrade to extend the grades of the head of finance and support services and the head of estates and civic pride as set out in the report. And number 3, to note the new entrance to the LGPS as stated. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Or hands up? Thank you. That's agreed, Town
That's
Clerk.
carried. Thank you very much.
So that is the end of the report. I will close this meeting at 7:50. Thank you very much for attending tonight, and I think we got through quite